we have Dr. Dan Winters with a 10-minute presentation.
You did tell him that.
Did. So I knew two problems I had. Number one, I did not number my slides. My apologies. And now I got to talk fast. So this report is about some data in our student progress in terms of local indicators, CAS official results, and our physical fitness results. Beginning with the local indicators. So you may recall that the state of California has 8 indicators that we need to show progress on. And we're going to see the data on that quantitative data when the dashboard comes out in December. But there are these 4 local indicators, which our goal from the state is to analyze our progress on these measures and to simply reflect on where we're at and determine strengths and weaknesses. So in the attachments to this presentation, there are some details related to these 4 local indicators. I'm going to briefly go over them here. The first one is the priority 1, which are basic. And that refers to our ability to appropriately assign teachers to classrooms, and in particularly for English learners, in which case we are 100%, have 100% of our teachers who are appropriately assigned to students, and in particular English learners. We have, this is from last school year, we had 11 vacancies at that point in the report that were not covered at that point, so that was less than 1% of our teachers. 100% of our students had access to textbooks, and 24 of the 29 campuses had a good or exemplary rating on their FIT score. So there were 5 schools that were fair only, and so this year, as we're right now doing that FIT report, we're focused on those particular 5 schools so that each and every one of them reaches the good or exemplary report. The second indicator is the implementation of state academic standards. That one is really a focus on how we've implemented the academic standards, the Common Core, Next Generation Science Standards, training and instruction to teachers. And it was a self-rating, and if you see the self-rating in the attached documents, you'll see that we are rated very high. We rate ourselves very highly. We've made a lot of progress, in particular because of the work of curriculum and instruction and sites, who have done a lot of PD around Common Core over the last 4 to 5 years. So in almost every case, we are full implementation or full end sustainability, with one exception being NGSS. We put ourselves at initial implementation. Definitely have a little longer to go because that was a much more transformative change in science instruction with NGSS. That's the summary then of our priority 2. Priority 3 is parent engagement. And you can see that in Sweetwater, really getting engagement of parents is the way we do business here. And we have the typical DAC, DLAC, and school site council and ELAC committees across our district. But we also reach out to our parents through things such as the Hanover survey every year, both parents and staff. And one great example of our reaching out to parents and letting that guide our plan is the State of the District event that we did last February. In particular, one of the things that we heard in that event was the need for community relations facilitators. So then we proceeded to make that a part of our LCAP funding, both site and a district overseer of the community relations facilitator. That came directly from seeking input of stakeholders at that event. And the last local indicator is school climate. And indeed, we reach out to determine school climate in several ways. We have, as I mentioned, the Hanover survey, which asks parents and staff about culture and climate. We also use the California Healthy Kids biannually, which is grades 5, we don't have any 5th grade, 7 and 9. And so we get that every other year. And we've just added a new survey, the Core Social Emotional Learning, Culture, and Climate Survey, which we began administering this month and will be doing from this point forward annually. So we definitely have analyzed our school climates in a variety of ways. That data goes back out to the sites for them to determine strengths and weaknesses and create next steps as a part of their LCAP plan at their site. So that is a summary of our local indicators. I'll just pause briefly if you have any questions about that portion before we jump into CASP results.
Questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Hall?
I just have one.
Yes.
And that is that when you're going to use an acronym, that you state the full name first and then the acronym
Absolutely.
at least one time so
How
that
many
we
did I use?
understand what the acronym stands for.
Yes.
Thank
Was there
you.
one in particular you want me to clarify?
NGSS.
NGSS. Thank you. Next Generation Science Standards. Thank goodness
Okay.
it's one actually knew what it meant. Thank you for that clarification. We will be acronym free. So the California
Well,
assessment.
I don't want you to be acronym free, but I want you the very first
Yes.
time say the full And
Got
then the acronym will be this, and then I can follow you
Absolutely.
through the rest
And you
of
can start with that one.
I was just going to start with that right now. So this is, what's the
Thank
second
you.
A? California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress. I don't know what the second A is. My goodness.
California.
What is it? Oh, California. Okay. See, I knew it all the time. Also known as CASP. So before we do that, I'd like to do two definitions. So one of the measures we have because of our partnership with the core is called this core growth measure. And it's a very particular measure that looks at every individual student, each student, and creates a prediction on them based on their performance the year before and all the demographics that are pertinent. For example, English learners, socioeconomic disadvantage, foster youth, et cetera. So if you remember back in the CST days, we had a thing called similar schools where we tried to rank ourselves according to similar schools. This is the same thing, but at a student level. And so the core gives us for every individual student a growth measure based on their prediction, and also gives us an average score for all of our schools in terms of that growth measure. So I mentioned that now because you're going to see that measure in a little bit later. So hopefully we'll know what that means when I say core.
And just so that
growth.
we're clear, CORE is not an acronym. That is just CORE.
Right, core is the schools that we joined with that started a partnership around California. There was 8 schools initially, LA Unified, San Francisco Unified, and others. We joined them to sort of a data initiative to share data and including the use of this core growth measure. The other definition that we want to talk about is English learners and accountability. In the dashboard that will be coming out in December, there will be an English learner category that will be new and unique to this school year. They will now combine English learners with RFEP students who are RFEPs for up to 4 years into one category called English language learners. RFEPs, who are redesignated, it's right there, redesignated fluent English proficient, aka RFEP. Thank you, good job. So that's the English Learner Accountability Group, and you'll see them in a minute. We don't have data on those students yet. We'll see that data on them in December. So our first slide is our English learner results for the last 3 years by grade level. And as I talk about the grades in progress, I'm going to mention the growth from baseline year of 2015 to 2017. You can see in English language arts, we have solid growth from the baseline year of 6, 7, or 8 percentage points in each grade level. And in terms of 7th grade, you can see it's broken down by every school. Sorry, all the school names don't show up on this slide. But what we see in that growth in 7th grade language arts is that 10 of those schools from the baseline year increased, and 1 school went down. In 8th grade, we will see that actually from the baseline year, all 11 schools increased in language arts. And now talking about the growth measure, this slide will show you the growth measure, the average growth for our students compared to all of the core schools. So the best way to look at that is really in 3 ways. If you're at the top of that band, like Mar Vista Academy and Montgomery Middle, they grew faster than the average students in the growth, in the core collaborative. If you're in that middle band, right around that dark line, they grew about the same or similar to core growth students. And if they're at the bottom, they grew, but they grew slower than the average core students.
So can I just interrupt for a second?
Yep.
Dr. Winters, do you remember how many students are now included in this core district number?
Approximately 1.8 million.
Okay. So it's not a few students that they're comparing to, it's 1.8 million other students that are similar, like our district. And so this is why this is very significant data.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And in terms of 11th grade language arts, the change from year 1, we have from the baseline year, 7 schools went up, 4 schools went down, and 1 school remained the same. And then in terms of that growth measure, you can see 2 schools that really stand out in terms of growing faster than average would be Castle Park High and Eastlake High, who, as you can see, were on the top of that growth band. And then this is a summary of what I've mentioned through each slide, which shows you the blue, the number of schools that went up by grade level in language arts. Yellow went down, and a few that maintained or stayed the same from the baseline year. Now, if we want to look at student groups, in middle school, we see that there's a trend you're going to see across both math and language arts. We did see a closing of the gap of socioeconomically disadvantaged students, but we saw either a widening or no change in the gap when it came to students with disability and English learners. So that definitely is an area we're focused on, both in language arts and math. I just want to point out that there are two groups you see there, English learners and RFEP are the old groups. So English learners are students who have not yet been reclassified, not yet RFEP'd. The RFEP students are students who have been reclassified. In December, when we get the dashboard, they will take all those English learners and those RFEP students, less than 4 years, and create one group. So I just want to point that out. Again, we don't have that data yet, but we will see that in the December dashboard. And then in terms of ethnicities, we can see that there was growth in just about every ethnicity group, anywhere from 7 to 15 points, compared to the overall growth of 8. High schools, we see that same trend once again, that the socioeconomically disadvantaged students close that gap somewhat from the first baseline year, but still not much change. In fact, a widening of the gap with students with disabilities and English learners. And in terms of the ethnic groups in English language arts and high schools, the one group did drop slightly, the Asian group, 3 percentage points. All other groups rose anywhere from 3 to 12 percentage points. And here's a summary of the highlights for language arts. We see that our performance is actually strong when compared to state and county trends, which were quite flat, especially in middle school. And we saw schools like Mar Vista Academy and Montgomery Middle that grew faster than the average core schools. Areas of concern in terms of, well, students of socioeconomically disadvantaged students are closing the gap, yet gaps persist with and widen with students with disabilities and English learners, as well as African Americans in middle school.
Mrs.
Question?
Hall?
Yeah. Could you go back? Well, no, that's good. The one you had up was fine.
This is math now.
Yeah, could you, I probably missed it. You
Yep.
probably explained it earlier, but what does the 0 to 100 represent?
Correct. Great question. So that represents percentage proficient. So in the CASP, or California Association of Performance in Progress, students receive 4 levels. There's meet and exceeds are the students who are proficient now. So it's actually meet or exceeds. And the 2 levels below that are nearly met or not met. So this shows you those students who have met or exceeded. And so here we have math scores. And you see these are somewhat flatter than the language arts scores, a little more growth in middle school, +4 and +5, and just 1 point difference in 11th grade math since the baseline year.
Can I ask you one more question?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Not at all.
Since it's on the slide, I like to understand them better.
Yeah.
But if I'm looking at the 100% and I see that you 25% of your students say have met or exceeded, out of how many? So when I look at these slides, and for instance, we have a large population of Hispanic, right? So that with the English language arts by ethnicity, that doesn't necessarily tell us they're English learners or non-English learners, right?
Right.
That's just their...
Absolutely. So the ethnicity would just be ethnicity. Some are English learners, some are not.
Some may be proficient in... But how many... So out of... It doesn't tell you how many kids in all you're counting.
It does not. We can provide that by easily in an update, on a Friday
Yeah.
update. Absolutely.
Okay. That'd be great. Thanks.
Sure. So I think we're here on 7th grade math in terms of our school performances. And I just want to make a point of these graphs, the way we've laid them out. They're not alphabetical. They're purposefully put so that the schools on the far left are the schools with the highest socioeconomically disadvantaged students. Normally, you would see a stair step from that high socioeconomic disadvantage tend to perform lower. But you will notice that we have some schools on that left-hand side of the graph that are outperforming students, other schools, even though they have a higher percentage of socioeconomic disadvantaged students. So in math 7th grade, we see 6 of our schools have gone up, 3 have gone down, and 2 have remained the same since the baseline year. In 8th grade math, we see that actually 10 of our schools have improved, and just 1 has gone down since the baseline year of 2015.
Just for everyone's benefit, the slides that are showing up on the PowerPoint and on the screen are not as good as the actual PowerPoint, and we're not sure why that's coming out that way, but you're not seeing all the schools, you're not seeing, the numbers seem not quite right. We're going to have to work on that, but even the copy isn't as clean as looking at it on your computer. So just FYI.
Thank you. I think we're on math growth. So it is important to point out Castlepark Middle, which has made significant growth in math and that's actually both 7th and 8th grade, growing much faster than the other core schools, and definitely a school whose math performance is worth highlighting. In terms of 11th grade math, we see that 6 of our schools have went up, 5 went down, and 1 remained the same from the baseline year. And a school worth noting, highlighting here in terms of growth is San Isidro High School, which definitely is growing higher, faster than the comparative core students. And then here's a summary again of our math performance. So it is flat this year. We do see from the baseline year that many more schools have grown than have gone down. But math continues to be our main focus because it is flatter than language arts. And that is one of our main focuses with this year's LCAP. In terms of student groups, we can see that all students increased by 3. And those same trends that we saw in language arts are occurring with the student groups in math. We saw a closing of the gap by the socioeconomically disadvantaged students, but that gap in students with disabilities, English learners, persistent, if not growing. So that's the performance with middle school. And then in terms of ethnicity, we can see that in math, the vast majority went up slightly. With one group, the students who are 2 or more ethnicities did show 1% drop from the baseline year. So that's back to your earlier question. So that group of Hispanic students includes English learners, non-English learners, but all students whose ethnicity is Hispanic, which tends to be pretty close to our all students since we have such a high percentage of Hispanics in the district.
Can I ask you one more question?
Yeah.
When you're talking about the slides being grouped in from the highest, let's say, economically disadvantaged percentage, how many of these schools are in, what do you call it? They're probably Title I if they have at least a high 35 to 40% poverty, right? But there's a way that they have a nutrition, it's through the child nutrition program, right? That they're, I forget what the term is.
Free and reduced lunch?
Well, but they're deemed that. They don't have to keep collecting the apps every year, right? Do you have any schools like that?
No.
You don't do that at all? So every year you collect apps from everybody.
Yeah.
Yep.
Provision schools. So what? Yeah.
There's a certain criteria you have to meet, I think, to get that provision school status.
85% over a certain period of time at the minimum. That's as low as I think you can go. So if your school is continually at that level, you don't have to keep collecting apps. But then it would affect your LCAP funding, probably have to collect something else. Okay, thanks.
So looking at high school math, the student groups in high school math, once again, the same trends are seen here with very flat growth with all students. And for the most part, student groups remained the same. Again, socioeconomically disadvantaged students did grow from that previous year slightly. In terms of ethnicities, we see that only one student group dropped slightly from the baseline year. That would be Hispanic students. We saw some significant growth with students who are 2 or more ethnicities who grew 16 percentage points. The gap was, or the change was anywhere from 3 to 16. And here's some summaries for math. Scores across the district are flat. In fact, across the state and the county, math scores are flat, and I think are a concern across the state. Some schools in particular, San Isidro, are outperforming when compared to similar schools and similar students. Students with disabilities and English learners have seen a slight increase in the gap, which is not good. So between their performance when compared to all students. So they definitely are our students of greatest focus. Students with disabilities and English learners, and I would say in particular long-term English learners. And in some cases in high school, we saw even RFEP students, we classified students not performing as well as we had seen in the past. So there's a little bit more on physical fitness tests. Any questions in general or specifically about any of the slides on CASP scores?
Yeah, I got a question.
Yes, sir.
What do you think determines the fact that some of our schools are proportionally higher, like San Ysidro, you just gave that example? What's the reasoning behind that? Why are they outperforming and somebody else not?
Great question. I could give you my opinion. I don't think that we have.
I'll take that.
Yeah, I mean, San Ysidro in particular, and I'd say Castle Park High or Castle Park Middle, both together. That one thing I see is they're very well defined and operationalized PLCs or professional learning communities where they look at data constantly. They collaboratively work together as PLCs to design instruction, to provide formative assessment to see how kids are doing throughout the year and make adjustments to that. They tend to teach toward mastery. Those are some of the things that I'm seeing in schools that have performance that is very strong.
Okay. My next question is, do you think Common Core has a lot to do with why our math is flat?
I think the changes in Common Core expectations in terms of how kids show what they're learning definitely has been a challenge. If you look across the state, that has shown that flat performance may be due to all of us trying to learn how to get kids to show their learning in that different way. In fact, I know in language arts, there are, I think, 14 states that are using the SBAC performance, and all 14 of them were flat or went down this year.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think that shift in how kids are assessed is definitely causing us to think differently about how do we need to modify instruction.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor.
Can I ask you a question?
Mrs. Hall?
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that little reminder. So do you compare, you don't see the tests until you're given them, right?
Correct.
But there must be a group of professionals that meet to design those tests and critique the tests from year to year. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Do we have any representation on that committee from this district?
I'm not. We basically, as a state, sublet out that to a company called Smarter Balance. So I would imagine there are representatives from the state of California that support them, but they basically design that test. They pay a lot of psychometricians to create these assessments. But I don't know that there's a request for districts to be a part of the actual development of the tests.
But, if I may,
Of course, Dr. Jenny.
I think I just lost my train of thought.
So do we compare anything? Do we compare anything from year to year to see what in the testing has changed so that we can see if that has a factor into how students perform? If we don't have any, if we're not being able to track that in our own community, how can we control what's happening there? How do we really can see? I mean, we know that a bunch of professionals out there somewhere are weighing in on it, but do we know how to compare one test from one year to the next year and see if there's significant differences, and if those trends how they affect our community of high English learners, socioeconomic, a lot of, we know that our community here and even in other parts of our state have these significant numbers of kids that are immigrants or in challenging situations. So how do we know how those tests are speaking to them and how they're drawing out their real ability to respond? How do we know that?
Well, I would say a couple of things to that. One would be that the state has developed a pretty robust interim assessment tool that we're utilizing, which are assessments similar to the summative SBAC test that we can do throughout the school year to show us how our kids are doing. That system is not yet robust enough so that it would tell you as you take those interims, here's exactly where your kids are missing. It gives you kind of a general idea of how they're performing. Their promise is that as they develop more and more items, that we'll actually get a more concrete and specific snapshot of where kids are performing well and not throughout the year so we can adjust. So that tool will become better and stronger as the years go on. Secondly, our partnership with CORE is really one that will help answer part of your question, which was how can we talk to others who are having the same struggles with math or language arts with similar kids. And we reach out to the CORE twice a year as a collaborative, and we now have started to build some partnership with specific schools who are similar to ours so we can learn from those who are doing better than us in some cases. In some cases, we're telling them about schools in our neighborhood that have done well that they can learn from.
Okay, but if you once you give the test, is there any leftovers that you keep you can't take a copy of them you have to package them up and send them off. So there's no way for you to ever compare one year's test
Right.
document to another year's document and see if
Right. So in fact, this test is very different from CSC's in this sense. It's an adaptive test, which means that it's online, and when a student takes the test,
Yeah,
they don't
that's
take
right.
the same test.
I forget.
So if I get a question correct, I get a harder question. If I get it wrong, I get an easier question. So again, that interim assessment is is similar to what you're asking for.
But see, the interims and all, how often are we, it goes back to the question of how often are you testing? And then where's your instructional time when you do all, what I mean?
Absolutely.
And then how much of it is factored into the kids not, they touch the computer in the wrong spot and then there goes that. That was the issue, right, when they were doing the testing of SBAC.
Yes.
In the first, the kid would say, oh, wait, I touched the wrong place and it wouldn't let me fix it. It went on and it shot me down or it sent me on
Yeah.
or whatever. How much of that is factored in?
Well, I think, again, speculation on my part, so scratches from the record. But it could be that growth we all saw across the state the first year may have been due to just what you're talking about. Kids are now familiar with the system. The first year was very, very new and different to them. We saw a big jump just out of familiarity. But now we're getting to how different is the depth of kids' learning. That's harder for us to move that needle. So it's definitely a long-term progress that we will dig deep into the tools that are provided to us to really understand where kids are performing and where they need to get better.
Well, I mean, that's great, but it doesn't help us really in the moment, right? For the kids, I mean, data, I get what it's for.
Right.
But unfortunately, a lot of the information we gain from data doesn't do a whole lot for the kids that are in the grade this year for those kids taking
Absolutely.
the test.
There's definitely a limitation to what summative data and this type can tell us. And what's more important is that you talked about the schools that did well. They don't rely on SBAC data to guide their performance. They rely on data that they see daily and weekly in their classrooms that's common among their PLCs. And when they're looking at that data and finding out what kids can do well and adjusting instruction, they also perform well on state tests.
And is there differences between how many kids are in a classroom or how many extra hours they have in a class? I mean, you all look at it that too, right?
There are. I mean, there's a standard math sequence that students take. Students who are performing poorly often get an additional math course or a different type of math course. So not every student has the exact same amount of minutes or type of instruction.
But did these schools, Castle Park and San Ysidro, do they have consultants that help with training, or do you know how we're always asking about
Right.
Wilda Storm or this consultant or that consultant, or
Yeah.
if
Well,
they
it doesn't
have,
do math, right? That I know of.
well,
So-
I don't. I mean, I was just using the name
Right.
as a consultant, but we also have some after-school programs or something happening at the middle that might have enhanced learning there. That now you're seeing the results at the. Is that
Yeah, I'm not aware of any consultants they use, in particular for mathematics.
or assistants in the classroom? Nothing like that.
That's my knowledge of. Yep.
So, but one of the things we are implementing this year that we haven't in the past is we've got Mar Vista Academy, Southwest Middle, Castle Park Middle, who the previous year might have had some of the lower scores, but they're working on with their teachers to come up with ways that they can improve their scores. And some of it has to do with their PLCs, and some of it has to do with student academic tutors, which is one of the new job descriptions in math classes specifically, to give teachers an opportunity to have another adult in the room. So we don't know if that works yet. We're hopeful, and we're looking at data with those schools in particular that will be using those extra supports for students. The other thing is, we do believe that it's about the PLC work. So those schools have strong PLCs, and they got great results. Our collaboration goal for the year is to help all schools improve so that each teacher, like I think I shared earlier, that each teacher understands their role as an engaged and active and positive member of a dynamic PLC. So we still are working on that definition, but we think the closer we get to that, we're going to have better results. But in the end, it comes down to it's teacher-driven.
Right.
Can I add just one thing?
Only if you turn on
2 weeks ago on Friday, Tom Winters and Bettina Batista, both principals on assignment, met with principals at Castle Park Middle School, the middle school principals. There were 4 principals present who are now working on a project with Mr. Winters to look at what Castle Park's been doing and begin to have some understanding. They've each committed 2 teachers, or at least 1 teacher from each of those schools, to meet on a regular basis with the staff at Castle Park to see what they're doing and how they might be able to implement that within their own school setting.
Thank you, Dr. Carberry.
Thank you.
We just have a couple more slides left about physical fitness results from the You've achieved that goal. Thank you. So we have 2 slides about the 16-17 physical fitness results. And this shows you the percentage of kids who are meeting the healthy fitness zone, which means they pass 5 of the 6 areas in the fitnessgram test. And you can see from 15-16 to 16-17, we saw a slight drop in both 7th grade and in 9th grade who officially take this test. So you can see that drop 3 percentage points in terms of meeting the healthy fitness zone. And in breaking them down by male and female, we see that in 7th grade it's almost identical performance by male and female. But we do see a bit of a drop in high school where that percentage difference is 7. So definitely one area of concern and question for us to look at our high school PE programs in terms of supporting girls in 9th grade. So that's a summary, 2-slide summary of physical fitness results. Any questions related to that?
Any questions or comments from the board?
I do not have it by school. I would love to do that on a Friday update if you would like. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
K1.
I have 1 speaker, Kathleen Shears.
I see this was not put out to bid. Instead, the bottom paragraph, agencies were interviewed. Who selected the agencies? I have a real issue with this based on historical, what happened in the past. Secondly, if you read the first paragraph, which I read 10 times, still couldn't understand what this was all about. And then I decided it must be you're trying to get kids to eat more so that. Am I on the right thing? Everybody's looking like I'm crazy.
About dunk tank?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm talking about dunk tank.
Okay.
Yeah.
Page 2.
Yes. So it says here, this is my opinion, kids will do the marketing for you if you improve the menu, the food tastes good, you make the line shorter. I just saved you $35,000. Then you go to objectives, really read this. And tell me why the community would not be kind of really confused. It just, remember who was it? The student said about when you got together for the goals, the mission statement, and somebody came in and said, just cut to the chase. You guys need to cut to the chase on stuff like this because this is a lot to do about nothing. You know, if the food tastes good and the lines are shorter, the kids are going to tell everybody the food tastes good and we can get the food quick. And so you're going to make more money. But spending $35,000 to have somebody come in and tell you that, I just think is a waste of money. And I am very concerned at the manner in which this was done. I think this is not a really good, transparent manner. Thank you.
No further speakers.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, so how did we get
Mr.
to,
Sigler?
thank you, sir. How did we get to, how did we end up with dunk tank marketing, I guess would be my question.
Dr. Aguirre?
Sure, I'll ask Mr. Eric Span to come up and elaborate on that question.
Good evening, Board, President Solis, Superintendent, and the rest of the remaining board members. We came in contact, I did personally, with Dunk Tank through work with Vista Unified. Worked very closely with district I work very closely with directors of nutrition services across San Diego County. We have all been working very collaboratively with ideas on how we can increase participation in our school districts, and Dunk Tank was very successful in their work with Vista Unified. They're also very successful with La Mesa Spring Valley and working with their district in increasing communication with students and parents. And Dunk Tank, with their experience with California Thursdays, with initiatives like Farm to School, I have had an opportunity to personally see the impact of their services on the financial success and also increased meal participation at all the school sites and school districts in which they work with. We have, again, looked at our department as, we're a business, and we have to work with, an opportunity and how do we increase, communication, how do we increase advertisement, how do we increase just awareness of our program, and just looking at the actual impact that Dunk Tank has had, I can see that they have been very successful.
Other questions or comments from the board?
So it says here that one of the goals is to increase student participation and design a strategy for marketing and communications. Increase of ADP of 4.5% result in an additional revenue of over $500,000.
Correct.
So they will. That's going to be their objective. Is to
that is our objective, and based on historical data that they've used in success with Vista Unified. Across their district, they had a 16% increase over 5 schools and a district-wide 4.5% increase across all of their school sites with increased meal participation. For us, an increase of 4.6 or 4.5%, according to what our revenue is currently, is over $526,000. So when we look at, I'm going to do an acronym, it's a return on investment, or ROI. I think that investing $35,000 to increase the presence of our program, we've done a lot in regards to cleaning up a lot of things. I think our menu is one of the top menus that we have in the state. I think the type of food that we give out helps us to attract some students. As one of the mentions was increasing, speed and increasing awareness. We are working with Human Resources to look at, programs in which we can hire additional students to work in cafeterias. We're working, I met with Dr. Fulcher and Dr. Aguirre to talk with the adult school about attracting some of the students who are participating in those programs to come and work with us so that we can increase that. But it's also, dealing with the I'm going to say misinformation that a lot of people have about what we do. And, with working with Manny and Grants Communication and talking about a strategy of how do we get the message out a little more, I think it's a positive thing to use some professional people to treat our program, which is different than any other program, as a business. And so when we talk about investing $35,000, I look at the potential return on investment for the $35,000, and I think that's a smart move. I think, we want to look at how do we get the public, how do we get more people involved in what we're doing, how do we create, student engagement. And so looking at an organization that has had success in doing that, I feel very confident that we'll be able to reach those numbers. I feel very confident in the way the program is moving, but I do think that we could use a little assistance in just making sure that we're our packaging, our branding, all of those things that come into running really a standalone business, investment into what we do is a sound business practice.
And then the follow-up question. So do you have any idea, where it says that Vista Unified achieved a 60% increase? Do you know if that was like over? Did it take a year to get there?
So
2 years, 3 years?
So it's taken about 2 years that they work with them, and we're going to be working on a short schedule, And we have an opportunity to really prove what Dunk Tank can do for us. It's a month-to-month contract. It's not a $35,000 we pay up front. So we have some measurables that we're going to put in place to make sure that we're, seeing an increase. Along with Dr. Geary, we have run a couple of a couple of programs ourselves where, we've looked at adding one service line and ran it as a 6% increase, looked at that as a baseline, and we've seen success. But I think with Vista success, with La Mesa Spring Valley success, with the California Thursday success and getting the message around the state of California and here in San Diego County, I think that Dunk Tank is a adequate company that we can work with.
Right. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Dr. Aguirre?
Thank you, President Solis. From a strict accountability perspective, I'd like to offer that we've had conversations around the fact that there's a clear metric and a clear goal. If it's not met, we will not renew. It's pretty straightforward. Having said that, Mr. Span is confident that we will see, I hate to use the term return on investment, that we will see increased participation by our students, because that's ultimately the goal. If we don't meet this metric that is here, that's why we included a specific objective, so it'd be clear and measurable. If we don't meet that, we won't renew. So I just wanted to offer that as an accountability mechanism that we've considered and had through various conversations. We decided that we needed a goal, we needed a target. Otherwise, it could be amorphous. It could be kind of, we'll meet it next month. We'll meet it. So we have a target. We'll look at it at the end of this school year, see if it truly improved our participation rate. And if it did, at the end of the day, it means more kids are eating. That's the bottom line. There's a return on investment and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, more kids are eating, and that's where we want to get to. So there is an accountability piece, and that's why there's a clear goal and objective here, because we wanted it to be clear for the community, for trustees, for anybody who was wondering, what are you going to measure this against? We do have a mechanism to do that through here. And again, it's straightforward. If we don't meet that, then we won't renew. So I just wanted to offer that from accountability and oversight perspective.
Thank you for that. Mrs. Hall?
I thank you. I thank you, Mr. Span. I appreciate your work and your insight, and Dr. Aguirre for your support of his intentional direction of, work to improve the participation, because I know that's been your goal. I know that you have done a lot of things to really take this program across the district and refine it and do some really great work with it. And I have seen in my own experience how good marketing can pull out a lot of awareness about what's available and participation. Part of that is, as we know, is that you're able to deliver the food in a timely manner, and I'm hoping that you are able to get more of those service points out to the schools, that you're expanding that, all those carts and things. Have you moved that along?
So we are currently in the process of adding a barbecue station to East Lake Middle. We're going to simultaneously roll out a salad bar and a barbecue station. So we're currently looking at 3 sites, East Lake High, Olympian, and Otai Ranch High, as opportunities for focus, and Montgomery High as well. We see great opportunity by adding in additional serving points. So we're working with a vendor that provides a kind of outdoor structure that we can set up multiple serving points across the campus. Again, as Dr. Aguirre said, we have a measurable before we invest in any serving points, which also increases our labor, that we can assure that, we're serving meals that mitigate any of the labor costs to us, that also allow us to serve more students, but also run a profitable, or, as USDA offers for us, to break even program. So we are definitely doing that. And I would say within probably another 3 weeks, we should have East Lake Middle up first. We'll run that test, and then Montgomery High will be second with a outdoor serving point as well, to continue to increase meal counts across the district. And I think working in tandem with, rolling out a marketing plan, and that, that includes branding, that includes us really getting out and engaging students in a really professional manner. about what they're looking for. We also see opportunity to reach teachers and adults who are on the campus to increase those that meal participation. So it's on the way. We're definitely moving in that direction.
So let me ask you, it says that you're going to utilize social media and website and video.
Right.
So is it a separate website from our own district website?
No. So one of the things that we think, when we look at the Nutrition Services website, I think there's a lot more that we can do in regards to videos. And one of the things that I was really impressed with Vista is some of the videos that they had, that use their own students in marketing and supporting their meal program. And I think we have the opportunity to do that as well. I think that there's also an opportunity to teach a little bit about, nutrition. We have another excellent registered dietitian on staff that, we can use video and social media to talk about nutrition in our communities, really helping to support things like the FIT test and ensuring that proper nutrition is in our community, and we can engage parents involved in that as well. I remember that the student representative, and this was quite a few meetings ago, and I'll make sure I check the box on that talked about just using social media, using data, using a computer basically to kind of drive communication to students. We have an app, Yum Yummy, that came before the board. And I think we can maximize that. I think having the opportunity to touch all of the, let's say we're up to 11th graders with single serve or self-serve or single source computers. We have an opportunity to push messaging on a daily basis to all of those students. One of the things that we have to do is to get them to download it. So it's just, again, kind of looking at a well-rounded way in which we can increase knowledge of our program, but also looking at how do we take some resources that we also have access to put onto our website, drive participation and drive people to visit the website so that they can take part in those resources as well.
Okay. And I just had one more observation that I know that Eastlake Middle will have this barbecue station, and that's your first test site. And I think I would like to hear how it's going before. I'd like to make sure that you have feedback around that before you go and expand it, and that the board hears about it before. And the rationale for why you chose Montgomery Middle or Montgomery High as your next school instead of one of the schools that is a lot of students impacted with not being able to get to the lunch line?
So we chose Montgomery. Well, first of all, let me back up. We chose Eastlake Middle because one of the things that I've been trying to do at Eastlake Middle for the last 3 years was increase the opportunity to serve outside of just the cafeteria area. With changing leadership there, there has been an opportunity to do so. So we see an opportunity looking at a school site that is really secluded away from any type of food options outside of the cafeteria. We think our offerings are pretty solid, and by bringing additional serving points to that school site, we think we'll be able to stop the kids who are across campus from the cafeteria who don't even make that walk over. That by having something that's attractive to them, such as the barbecue, could increase participation. But I'm really interested in multiple points of service that offer multiple types of service options for students. I'd like to put on these campuses where we actually do a lot of fresh preparation, such as Hvac cooking and things like that. So barbecues are first. And in regards to Montgomery High, one of the things that we looked at is our staff and the way the cafeteria is situated in reference to the entire campus. There's a lot of pushing and pulling of carts. We do have honestly, we have a lot of women who work for us, and to be able to set up serving points that are already set up where they don't have to drag a cart from the cafeteria blocks, basically, a little bit of distance away from that spot, we can serve multiple meals, we can serve multiple points of service, and we can increase. That school is about 65, maybe a little higher, free and reduced, and we think we can reach a higher number of students by bringing the meals to where they are. And so we want to hit a variety of schools, but also, again, using the metric of, I think Dr. Aguirre and I set, I think just casually was 6% as a way that we can look at is this really working? And so by starting at the Eastlake Middle, moving to a Montgomery Middle, we're also being able to get to different socioeconomic areas and prove that by offering additional serving points and continuing to upgrade the food options that we serve, that we can continue to reach more students.
Okay, so did you say it was Montgomery Middle or Montgomery High?
I'm sorry,
your
Montgomery
next
High.
school? Okay, yeah, because there are other schools that have high free and reduced lunch, and that maybe I was hoping to hear you say that their participation was low and you wanted to bring it up, or there was some other issue, like a lot of students unable to access the lunch line because there wasn't enough time or whatever it was, rather than just because Montgomery High is not necessarily the one with the most free and reduced lunch or the most, I don't know those facts. And so I'd like to see that in a Friday update.
Sure, and I can give you that. And the goal is to increase meal participation and options for service across the district.
So I'd like to know which schools are not having where their participation currently is.
Okay, I can definitely give that to you.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Entertain a motion for K4? K1, sorry.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second.
Segura,
Yes.
Pike,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes?
Solis.
Yes.
Motion passes 4 yes, 1 absent.
All right, K4.
K4, I have 1 speaker, Kathleen Shears.
Trustee Tarantino doesn't simply talk the talk, but he walks the walk. I'm acknowledging his commitment to cost savings by adhering to the trustees' travel ban. He's paying his own fees. I don't understand why all 5 of you need to go, and I have a question. Why is there a difference in the cost from some of them are $818 versus $897? And $800+ per person for a local meeting, I think is extremely high. I'm going to be looking into the registration and where that money's going, but this just concerns me a lot. Thank you very much.
No further speakers.
Thank you. All right. Well, with regards to the 897 and 818, Mr. Segura and I are delegates, so we have to go a couple days earlier. So we'll have a couple meetings with that. All right. Other questions or comments? I'm sorry?
They're charging you to speak. I know, I'm sorry.
I never.
All right. Questions or comments? All right. Entertain a motion for K4.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion
Second?
and a second.
Segura,
Yes.
Pike,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes?
Solis.
Yes.
Motion passes 4 yes, 1 absent.
M1.
I have several speakers. Stuart Payne.
Good evening. As I said earlier, I have some personal concerns with this Olympian project. First one is it's now November, and track season starts early, mid-February. And so I want to make sure that we don't run into a situation where the track is not available, or the field, for that example, because you have the lacrosse teams that are competing as well. I want to make sure that the field and the track is available for the athletes. You probably have one of the largest track programs in the district at Olympian High School, so want to avoid that. The other thing is I want to strongly encourage that during the planning process that you engage the coaches, the track coach specifically the football coach, the lacrosse coaches, so they can better tell the planning department what it is they want and need. What typically happens is, and what definitely happened when they built that school, the contractors just give you a stadium, and it's basic. This one, for example, has no electricity on the field. You have a lot of unused space, and so it makes the stadium dysfunctional from a spectator perspective. For example, the discus is outside of the stadium over by the parking lot. The long jump and triple jump is behind the bleachers on the visitor side. The spectators expect to see all the events inside the venue. And at Olympian, you have the space to do that. Also want to make sure that the $2 million includes the pole vault, the high jump, the long jumps, and not just the track surface where you run, but those other field events as well. The coach would have some advice about how to mark the track. Right now, your tracks in high school are only marked for high school events. Well, there's youth events, there's USA events, there's collegiate events. You want your track to be marked for all of those, so then you're able to host more than just high school events, which would generate revenue for the school site and or the district. Of the $2 million, if you could, whoever's in charge, Mr. Gurry and I talked earlier, what's the breakdown? Is it $1 million each, or how is it? How much is going to the track? How much is going to the field? You might also want to look at, and the coaches would tell you this, the scoreboard and how that interacts with the actual performances. So you may want to look at doing an upgrade there as well. And I understand it's coming from the CFD, and so how much is in that CFD? Is there room for this to grow, that type of thing? And so I know my time has expired, so I'll shut up and move. And just the last thing I'll say is, when you spend this $2 million, you don't want to just end up with a stadium. You want to end up with a venue that generates money for the programs in the district. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nick Marinovich.
Good evening again. Be real quick. I want to commend the district for the project that Stuart Payne was referring to. Finally, when I went out there and we had our site tour of the Olympian High School, and we saw this big, what is that thing? That was very strange. Anyway, the second item I wanted to point out to on item M1 under number 5 on your analysis section of the front page of the letter to the board is the discussion on the Eastlake roof HVAC project, in which there's a project budget of $1 million, almost $1.1 million. And there's a statement in there about, well, why the costs go up. It was the specs and the inflation, and I subsequently talked to Dr. Aguirre, or through Carl, about why that was, and it's really the essence of what that cost increase is inflation, as I understand it. But this is, I think, really significant. It would be even higher if the specs had been the old specs that were done with the roofing company emphasis in the way it is now. So I want to commend the district for having the foresight. That's just roof on the specs. You don't know what else is in that system. The district is going to be saving in money in the future, and that's money for the students. And I think that's really significant. And the final thing, I was going to talk about it, I might talk about it here. I mean, you've had such a success as a district on the HVAC project, and I was just going through my phone and saw a video from 3 years ago on what the board meetings were, 4 years ago, what the board meetings were. I go, what? Look at where we are now. You've had a success on that project. You got next year coming. There's some good things that are happening. As a district, I'd figure out a way to give Manny more work and make everybody know that HVAC project is a huge success. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathleen Cheers?
So I have some questions, but I also have some comments. Number 2, is the $54,000 remaining? I'm not understanding that. Number 3, we've already spent money for a drop-off in East Lake, but it was poorly done. This was before your time. But there were members of the community that came forward and said it was poorly done. That was a waste of money. And I'm just concerned that the project management is done correct this time. Number 4, with regards to the East Lake, the high budget, Montgomery High School installed fobs as part of our Propo Project 2. And have you considered campus-wide cameras also installed as part of the project, Dr. Gary? Because what we found is that the graffiti decreased, and it also helped us to solve a robbery. So I really think that, and our cameras, you have night vision, whatever that stuff's called. I don't know what it's called. So that's just another point. Moving down to the East Lake High School roof HVAC. So I'm to assume that inflation was not put into the project? Why not? I mean, shouldn't that be built into every project, inflation? The next one is number 6. Again, with regards to Olympian High School, with Montgomery's Project 2, they included the community, the coaches, the teachers, admin, everybody, students, everybody came to the table and basically spoke of the needs of the school. And everybody kind of collaborated to see what we would get for the best buck for our dollar. So we were able to build, and you've all seen the gym there. That's because everybody worked together. It wasn't just, no disrespect to you, Dr. Gary, but it wasn't just district staff. You've got coaches that have needs. You have admin who has needs. And again, if you do it right, like Mr. Payne said, you could earn money. Because with Montgomery, we now have 2 gyms, and that school is able to earn money by having tournaments and all kinds of stuff like that. So I think we need to, this board needs to do what you do best, collaborate and decide you need to make some money here. And what better way to do it than to spend money now? And I'm not going to complain about it, you know, if you're putting the money in the right places. And the last but not least, how was this money saved on number 9, the $202,000? Thank you very much.
No further speakers. It was also pulled by Mr. Segura.
Mr. Segura?
Yes, so my question was on, it actually was exactly what Mr. Marinovich asked, was on the roofing and what the new spec is on that we're using there. So that's my question. What is the new spec on the roofing there?
Dr. Aguirre?
Thank you, President Solis. So the spec we're going to be using is our new specification. It's for a built-up roof. Our director has compared like to like, and in essence, we do find some cost savings on a per unit cost. The reason for the increase in price was at the time that the budget was set in the past. I want to say when this project first started, which was before I think any of us were here, there was a certain estimate that was used as the basis for that budget. But if it were not for our new specs, this number would likely be higher. So that's a fair statement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board? Dr. Aguirre, if you may.
Yeah, so I heard a number of questions. I'll let you tell me which ones you want me to address.
Yeah, so with regards to number 2, the decrease.
So that number 2, that project is getting closed out. That those funds, the $54,000, remain in the budget, so they will now be transferred back into the bond sale 1 contingency account. In essence, it came in under the budget by that amount, so that goes back to contingency.
Okay, thank you. For number 3, the drop-off.
So that's been a collaboration with the city of Chula Vista. There was a meeting that happened, I want to say about a month ago, where they actually had developed a set of projections from their city engineer. We, on our end, need to conduct some due diligence. while they don't necessarily have resources in terms of funding to allocate to this, they are willing to be partners with us, with helping us with some of the movement of utilities that are likely to need to happen. Since they do have a public right-of-way, that's a cost saving to us because in essence they can mandate for the public utilities to move something from the public right-of-way. And they also have agreed to review, do some plan checks or whatnot as we go through the process to ensure it meets city requirements as well. So that's a partnership with the city of Chula Vista, because just like us, they hear feedback from the community, and so that's the reason why we're moving forward on that project.
Nice. With regards to number 5.
So number 5 is the item around the East Lake roofs. As I mentioned, were not for our new specifications or prior specifications would have likely resulted in a higher cost, is what we are hearing in terms of what we know from the market.
And 6 with the collaboration with coaches and whatnot, with the public.
Yeah, that's an important point. At this point, the funding that was allocated was solely for the purpose. There's a 2-phase process. One, we know that track season is soon arriving, so part of this fund will go towards an immediate kind of short-term repair so that it can be in usable form by the time the season starts. We did walk it, and we are aware there's a lot of issues. So there's some allocation here for purposes of doing a shorter-term repair. Long-term, this really is for us to repair the track field, install some water cannons. We're aware that this particular field does not have water cannons, and that's important for purposes of maintaining the field. We can have conversations in terms of budget. I don't have the figures with me in terms of what it can be supported and what can't, but we're definitely open to holding meetings with coaches and site level staff, community members. We can definitely do that, and I think the first CBOC meeting we had, walkthrough we had, demonstrates that our commitment to that.
Excellent. Mrs. Hall, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I think what we're asking you to do overall is to make sure that we're trying to live within the budgets we establish, if at all possible, if there's extenuating circumstances. I mean, I hear what Mr. Payne is saying, and I think they're valid, but I think we have to take that back and weigh what we can do now and what is future endeavors, and see how you can optimize what the plans are. Because again, if there's anything, I didn't know they didn't have lights out there. Is there a lot of, yeah, so there's no electricity? I thought you said.
The electrical outlets, so when you
Power.
try to plug power to run computers and sound systems, there's no electricity.
But they have a sound booth up, right?
Yeah, but you can't run it across the track when you're trying to run it.
Okay. But the need for what we're trying to do is get what you've got planned going. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And for number 9, the money saved, the $212,000.
Right, so out of bond sale 1, there was an allocation made towards supporting the staff, the administrative functions, if you will, of the bond. So at this point, that funding, we have an administrative set aside from bond sale 2. So we do not believe we need this particular funding. So it goes back towards projects.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you. Any further questions or comments? I'll entertain a motion for M1.
I'll make a motion to approve M1.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second.
Segura?
Yes.
Pike?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes?
Solis?
Yes.
Motion passes 4 yes, 1 absent.
M2.
Kathleen Shears?
The second paragraph, amendment value. Could somebody define that for me? Second issue is, you'll notice Amendment 1, basically we're doubling the cost of the original fee. And the last thing is that I'd like to bring to the board's attention that over the past 9 years, including under your seats, I have seen other agenda items with indicators that money would be reimbursed, but yet I have not seen those monies brought forward to this board and this board told, oh, well, here's the money that they were going to reimburse. So am I to assume that amendment value means we're going to get this $7,400 back? And if that is the case, whose responsibility is it to keep track of this $7,400? And will it be brought forward to the board? Thank you very much.
Nick Marinovich?
Quickly, this is not to pick on staff or pick on Nino and Moore or anything like that. But again, as one who worked in the area and know how easy it is to feel comfortable with a consultant, and you sort of keep going with them because they do the job, they're easy to work with, and they keep. And I don't know if there's a way. It just seems like Nino and Moore. It just seems like it's every agenda that when it comes to this kind of testing gets the contracts. And I don't know if there's any other firm. I don't know. I like competition, not to pick on them, and not that anything. It's just word to the wise. Might want to consider that.
No further speakers.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Then I think, Dr. Aguirre, with the Nino and More, I think we went over it a little bit a couple meetings ago. But could you just refresh our memories?
Yeah, so there's a list of pre-approved consultants, and they're one of the few. There's actually very few firms that are kind of the one-stop shop the way they are in the county of San Diego. We've looked at other firms that may do that, and sometimes they end up being the more cost-effective option. In this instance, if there's more specifics, we can definitely ask the project manager or no, the assistant director. But they do offer a lot of services that sometimes aren't available from other firms. It's a fairly limited field in terms of providers that are available in our county. That's one of the realities that we contend with. Having said that, we can definitely look at alternatives in terms of other firms that provide those types of services. We may need to kind of break it up in terms of different firms providing service. So that's there's that question in terms of that particular firm. And again, we try to be fair to all vendors who come forward.
Appreciate that. And with regards to with the assessment value?
So I believe that item, and I'm going to make an assumption, was around East Hills Academy Quad project, and there's a reimbursement that would be coming back to the district. So that generally is processed by planning and construction by project specialist staff. It doesn't necessarily come back to the board for action. It's a reimbursement. So it's provided to district. We can provide information through a Friday update in terms of what's been received, at least for this fiscal year, this most recent fiscal year.
And we're like with regards to you bringing it to the board or a Friday update, where else is the public able to go to a certain location and view reimbursements that we've received, or that's not how that works?
So I can do a little bit. Generally, it's processed. There's multiple departments involving our financial services department. So we can put a Friday update in terms of the actual process where it comes in, departments received. I know that our from planning and construction, we do provide with invoices and the follow-up. I do know that part. In terms of once the funding is received, then obviously it goes to finance. Okay. So it's two departments that are working in tandem.
Okay. Thank you. Entertain a motion for M2.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Segura?
Yes.
Pike?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Solis?
Yes.
Motion passes 4 yes, 1 absent.
M3.
Kathleen Shears?
So I'd like to begin with the Hilltop High School. Why weren't these installations part of the initial design? Hopefully this will not turn out to be another National City Middle or SUH High, where add-ons continue to be added to original project due to poor management. And then the $43,426 for a ticket booth. I mean, really? $43,000 for a ticket booth? You can go to Lowe's or Home Depot and get one of those prefabs. You can just plunk on the ground. You don't need DSA. You don't need no more for probably $2,500. this is just absolutely ridiculous. Moving on to the Otai Ranch High School. And I kind of talked with Ms. Quirk about this for a few minutes. I'd just like to, it's my understanding that there are problems out at Otai Ranch due to an aquifer or something like that. So are you aware of the fact that April 21st, 2008, the then board approved $300,000 to correct the problem? July 21st, 2008, the board approved another $10,000 to correct the problem. January 26th of 2009, the board approved $93,000 to correct the problem. And I believe that you all approved May 13th. Were you here? You were here in 2013. 250. You weren't here. Okay. You weren't here. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Janney. May 13th, 2013, the board then approved $250,000 to correct the problem. I touched base with Ms. Quirk during the break and said, did you know this has been going on? And she did not. So this is my 2 cents. Can we correct the problem once and for all? I mean, just we need to get it fixed, because you can't keep dumping hundreds of thousands of dollars into this. And this is in no way a negative to Ms. Quirk. I'm the historian here. So,
Nick Marinovich.
My apologies again here, just quickly. You know, we've made so much progress in the completeness of the reports, Dr. Aguirre's presentations, and so on. And I won't go through the litany of positive things, but given the way this community is and given the dynamics of the Bond Oversight Committee, I thought that there'd be a little bit more justification on the ticket booth and why something would cost that amount of money. Because I'll be honest with you, I don't know, but it's a logical question to ask. So why not provide the information, the client? It's like, that's a ticket, but it just stands out as something that begs for more information. And I know in the past, you know, the culture of the district has been to kind of be as incomplete as possible and hope nobody asks questions. But I'm asking questions. Why does the ticket booth cost $446,000? It's a legitimate question that should be answered. And I hate to be like this, but it gets frustrating. Thank you.
Thank you.
No further speakers. It was also pulled by Mr. Pike.
Mr. Pike.
Yeah, Dr. Geary, am I reading this correctly? This ticket booth is removed from the scope of work, so we are not paying $43,000. We took it away because we don't want this company, correct?
Dr. Aguirre?
President Solis, thank you so much. That is correct.
Yeah.
If you see the brackets, that's because that's actually a deduction. It's coming back to us.
Yeah.
So it's actually not something we're paying. It's something that's being deducted from the contract. So that's a separate process than what we're talking about, which we have talked about decreasing the scope for this particular vendor and then issuing another RFP or another bid for that work. That will be part of the work. At this point, we're specifically focused on this particular contract, and so we're removing it from them. I'll ask the department to review, kind of do a market analysis of what the construction cost for this particular project is. But at the end of the day, this particular item in front of us is a deductive change order where we're actually removing scope of work. That is correct.
Okay, good. Thank you. That clarifies it. And the other thing is that when we went through the agenda preview, I had questions concerning why, when a contractor hits a PVC pipe on Hilltop, why are we paying that money? Well, what it turns out is that, and that's why I wanted to talk about it, I wanted to clarify, there was no record of that PVC pipe anywhere in the plans, and that PVC pipe had electrical wiring in it, which they normally don't. They have conduit or something like that. And so because of the fact that A, they didn't know the pipe was there, B, they hit a pipe that had electricity in it, that's why the cost is $1,200. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Right, so
Mrs. Hall?
I have a comment, and that is, I appreciate the work of staff and what has come before the board in the past as far as plans and approvals, and what we've done in the past, or what has been moved forward as a plan for a school site and their project, and what they've weighed in on and have put together and has been vetted through the process. I feel that we've made a commitment to that school and to that community and to the people across our district, no matter what site it is, that we should be supporting that work. I agree that sometimes, it may seem unreasonable because we don't have all the facts around it, but at some point we vetted it and approved it, and I think we have to stay with that plan. That's what is being expected, and I think what we were asking when this discussion came up, and it was around, I believe, concession stands at the time. If we have a district manual that says our standard for a high school is this type of facility or this type of a track or this type of athletic gym, we're going to go with that as our standard. If it has 2 concession stands, then every school would have 2 concession stands because that's our district standard, rather than second guessing every time, because I feel that it's counterproductive and it calls into question what we're doing as a district in our whole planning process, and also in allowing those things, because I think staff does go out and talk to people and they do hear from different constituents. If you have a meeting, I know they've done that several times at other schools where they've sat down with concerned staff or even community members to discuss projects that are ongoing or about to come about, in order to assure people that they're listening and that they're so I think we have to keep that in mind when we see these items come up and questions are raised, that we have had a process around what we're being are coming forward on our board items. So thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Entertain a motion for M3.
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion and a second.
Segura?
Yes.
Pike?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Solis?
Yes.
Motion passes 4 yes, 1 absent.
M4.
Kathleen Shears?
I had to kind of think about this, and it kind of goes back to the inflation and all that, because things change, as it's been discussed this evening. So I'm just concerned about this pool thing, because I think each project should stand alone, and that each company bidding should come in for that particular project, whatever that is. And with regards to the ticket booth, my issue was this: $43,000 never should have been put before you for a ticket booth. I mean, I understand the brackets and everything, sir. It's just that's just exorbitant. And I agree with you, Ms. Hall. We do need to stick to our word with regards to the campuses. But also with regards to the specs, and I brought this up before, Dr. Geary, the specs that you have on the district, I read those things, 100 and some odd pages. I couldn't find anything for fields. There's nothing there. So when we're told specs, either we have them or we don't. And I believe every school needs a ticket booth, needs concession stands. I'm just saying one thing. This is not Orange County. This is Sweetwater Union High School District, and we need to carry ourselves accordingly. And our money needs to be spent wisely. And I'm looking to you, board. If I'm gonna support a bond, I want to see you guys up there asking for the money to be itemized, and for solid thinking to be done. Montgomery, you've been to Montgomery, Ms. Hall. It's a wooden little building that one person stands in. Not that everybody should have that, please. But $43,000? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nick Marinovich?
I want to first of all apologize. My concern was also understood we were taking it out. It was just like that ticket booth. It's just like, how do it be that amount? But we've talked probably enough about the ticket booth. Let's talk about something positive. I would applaud the district for using design build. I think as one professionally who worked with this heart and soul for 5 years, it can really work out well. Let me give you some advice. As if Janaea probably doesn't need any advice, but one is that the specs and the program that you do prior to doing the bid better be lead tight. Make sure you've talked to all the clients and you get down every little word that you can in those specs or description of what you want to do that design build team, because that's going to be critical, and then submitting a guaranteed maximum price if that's your wish. Secondly, and this is where this district got into trouble, and when you're all gone and there's a new board, you want to institutionalize this process. So because it's qualification-based selection, that's where you get into trouble as a school board. That's where this district got into trouble with Gilbane SGI. So having the processes and procedures where that evaluation committee is as far a distance from your individual bodies as possible, where when that committee, if this process evolves that way, you have a committee that selects the best value firm, not just lowest cost, best value, that you can say to the public there was no undue influence. This process looks very similar because they have a pool over at Grossmont Union High School District, but they were leaseback contractors, I believe, Janaea, right? And they have the pool, and then they have for each individual project, they have the pool of leaseback contractors submit a proposal, as I understand it. The problem is, if you look at the ballot, the campaign contributions, there's a potential, I'm not saying that occurred, but there's a potential when you have a design build process in the future, if this process internally isn't set tight as possible, that you can have that possibility. And all I'm saying is be wary of, I think it's a good thing you're doing, just be wary of the pitfalls if the process isn't in place adequately. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No further speakers.
Questions or comments from the board? Entertain a motion for M4.
I'll make a motion.
I have a motion
Go me a Coke.
I'll second.
and a second.
Segura?
Yes.
Pike?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Solis?
Yes.
Motion passes 4 yes, 1 absent.
M5.
Kathleen Cheers?
We've been doing this for a lot of years, so I'm not understanding what lack of clarity means. Our project managers have been around a long time, so and no disrespect, Dr. Geary, but, I like, you could save them having to listen to me 15 times, or everybody could if you would just kind of lay it out there what it is. What does lack of clarity mean, sir? Thank you. And this is on 5 and 6.
No further speakers.
All right. Questions or comments from the board? Okay, Mr. Aguila? Lack of clarity?
Yes, thank you. So this item was a little quirky because the way we structure our language in our bids, it indicates that the bid shall comply with prevailing wage. We have an entity that came in that doesn't comply with prevailing wage, and so after doing some homework, there's a kind of a unique, I don't know if set aside or they meet the law but in an odd kind of way. So we think we can clarify the bids to make sure that it says in essence, you shall pay a prevailing wage. Because other than that, there was some confusion there. So again, that's what I mean by clarity is regarding the issue of prevailing wage.
So,
It got a little odd.
so
Ms. Carbucci?
basically what has happened, and it is absolutely a policy call for you as a board, our documents are drafted. We're in the process of transitioning to all new front-end documents. And on those front-end documents, the language will change to say that a bidder must pay prevailing wage, not comply with prevailing wage laws, because there are a number of folks that can be exempted from prevailing wage laws So we're in the process of that transition. So instead of us granting a bid knowing the fact that we're about to change our language, we wanted to make sure that we had that clarity written in, because it was a loophole. It was quirky, as Dr. Aguirre likes to say, and it wasn't Janae's fault. And but it really was one of those situations from a policy perspective. You've previously talked about the importance of prevailing wage and ensuring that folks, especially that are working in our communities, are paid a prevailing wage. And we felt that this was a loophole that we really had never anticipated, and the attorneys we worked with didn't anticipate. And so we felt that it was better to clarify that than to move forward with an exemption under the law. And that was a long way of saying what we meant by clarify, but we also weren't going to call out one individual bidder as well in our board item.
Thank you. Mrs. Hall?
So I have a question, thank you. I appreciate Mrs. Cheer's question coming forward on this item. My question would be, what will this do for we have 5 bids here, which is a decent number, I suppose. So what cost is it to them when you rescind the bid?
So generally speaking, the cost has to do with preparation of a bid, which is time and effort. I don't have the quantitative. I don't generally have that information in terms of what type of investment they make for
There's no
bid
charge
preparation.
for them to submit a bid. They don't have a charge to that, and you're not going to really change ultimately you're not changing much except for that one piece of the bid.
Correct.
Was there a vendor that submitted that you had questions around?
There was one vendor, yes, that we had questions around.
All right.
Any other questions or comments?
I make a motion to approve M5.
Oh, real quick. Was there any other speaker for M6?
No, so if you'd like to take M5 and 6 together.
M5 and 6.
Yes. Yes. Okay, we have a motion for M5 and M6.
I'll second.
And a second.
Segura?
Yes.
Pike?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Solis?
Yes.
Motion passes 4 yes, 1 absent.
N4.
Kathleen Cheers?
I just have a question with regards to asphalt, because Dr. Gary, I know you remember the night, and probably so does Mr. Bradley, that Ms. Adado brought up the issue of asphalt at Bonita Vista High School. And I know that historically that's been a problem with the asphalt wearing out at several of the campuses. And I know that we have dealt with this company forever and a day, not saying they're not good, but this is the question. So who inspects our asphalt projects? Does anyone inspect our asphalt projects? And if they don't, maybe we need to start doing so and keeping track of how long they last. Thank you very much.
No further speakers.
Questions or comments on N4? Dr. Aguirre?
I'll ask Mr. Ron Malone to address that question.
Thank you, Superintendent, President Solis, Board. In this case, every shop has a responsibility. In this case, it's the plumbing shop. So it would be the responsibility of the plumbing shop supervisor to go out and inspect the job to make sure that it's done appropriately. He signs off on the invoice and it's routed to me for payment. So that's how it's inspected. We don't have an inspector or project manager. Each supervisor for their shop is responsible for managing the vendors under their purview.
Thank you. Questions or comments? All right, entertain a motion for N4.
I'll make a motion.
I have a motion
I'll second.
and a second.
Segura?
Yes.
Pike?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Solis?
Yes.
Motion passes 4 yes, 1 absent.
Q1.
Kathleen Cheers?
So when you all ran for the board, you basically were told that there was one board meeting a month. And so I'm sure you considered that before you ran for the board. You're all very busy. Mr. Segura, you're extremely busy. According to board regulations, it talks about hardships with regards to a board member being paid for not attending a board meeting. I I don't believe, I could be wrong, I don't think so, that Mr. Segura would consider it a financial hardship not to be paid. But to get to my point, he deserves the right to be able to do his job and to be able to meet the requirements of his job. However, I believe it's an undue burden on the board, obviously particularly Mr. Segura, to have to be here twice a month. And so once again, I would just like, we should be out of here by 10 o'clock, to consider only having one board meeting a month. And this is nothing personal against you, Mr. Segura, and you and I don't always agree on everything, but I do listen when you talk. And you do have a lot to say, and I think all of you are important with your opinions. But if you have a board member who's not here because of other responsibilities, that's an issue. So if you could please take into consideration only having one board meeting a month, and I think that would resolve this issue. And I thank you very much.
Thank you.
No further speakers. Staff would recommend Mr. Segura abstain on this item.
Cool.
Questions or comments from the board? I entertain a motion.
I'll second.
Are you making a motion?
Entertain a motion for.
entertaining?
Oh, I'll make a motion.
We have a motion
I'll
To
second.
approve.
and a second.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second.
Segura,
I abstain.
Pike,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Solis.
Yes.
Motion passes 3 yes, 1 abstention, 1 absent.
Q2.
Kathleen Cheers.
This is just a little thing. If you look down at fiscal impact, it says none. But they're increasing the contract 2 different times, so I'm just pointing that out. I know you'd like that, Ms. Hall. I'm learning from you. Thank you.
The fiscal impact says none because this was approved under the change order. The resolution is just to authorize the exemption and the contract change order. The fiscal impact was approved under the change order item.
Thank you.
Motion to approve
Yeah, motion.
Q2?
And a second.
I'll
And
second.
a second. Sorry.
Segura,
Yes.
Pike,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Solis.
Yes.
Motion passes 4 yes, 1 absent.
Sorry. Okay. Board communication. Let's start with Mr. Segura.
Yes. Is it too late to chime in about the ticket booth?
Yes, sir.
I did some math here real fast, and if it's a $40,000, structure, right? And if you do half of that is say half of it's labor, that's really, my math is 200 hours of labor. If you figure out $100 per employee or per crafts person to be on the job is what the contractor would price it with his markup, and then the other could be for materials, right? Materials aren't cheap. Block. We build stuff that lasts forever, not put crap from Home Depot that will last maybe 1 year because of the wear and tear of what we of all our stuff's built bulletproof here at the school. So I can kind of see how that but I'm sure we're going to get more information. So now that you said no, I better not talk about it. So, anyways. I'm sure we'll find out. So I would first like to wish Mr. Pike a happy birthday. Oh, how about that? He can retire.
Thank you.
Not from here, though. We need you here. I can tell you that I had although I did miss the last board meeting, which was said about 5 times a day. I've been busy out in the community. I actually I read some nice emails from some of Mr. Gomez's students at Castle Park High. They did the visit to our electrical training center. And I just wanted to read a couple of what a couple students said. They had like an exit, what do they call it? An exit
ticket?
Exit ticket on their experience. And a couple of them, there was a number of them were really, somebody wrote like a whole page, literally it was like a whole, I was so impressed with, I didn't want to read that one, no. That person should be a writer, not an electrician. But one of the students says, today I learned about bending the silver pole, which is conduit, right? You bend that with a tool, using the MT tool, and that I want to apply for this job. And for me to do that, I need to get good grades and a high school diploma. So, you know, that's the impact that they have just with attending, you know, or seeing our training center and doing an activity. And another one said, what I learned, another student said, what I learned was that the electrical training center is better than college. So this person's really, you know, got it going. And I will apply for it in the future so I could become someone in life. So, you know, that's some sweet remarks. And I think what was common in all the comments from the students was the hands-on. The kids love hands-on activities, whereas building. And then another one mentioned that when she was doing the, there was a young lady who, when she was doing the conduit, that she really liked how she had to apply trigonometry to the bending of the conduit, because they use Pythagorean theorem to determine where you kick the conduit or do an offset. So I was really impressed with that. And I wasn't able to go down there when the students were there, but I really could tell that they had a real good time, and I'm glad they were there. And I hope that we could expand that to not just electrical trades, but all the other trades, to see what the students are, or to see what other options are for all our students. And I could tell you that I sat on the JTC, which is our apprenticeship for our training center, and we interviewed over 300 applicants for about 25 spots that we're going to be taking in January. And I could tell you, I really, I definitely note and take a lot of good notes on applicants who come from Sweetwater, because that's, you know, I really, really feel that we need to get more of those students in. And I try to, and I usually get their number if they're not ready for it, because you got to be ready for it, or they're not, you know, for whatever reason they're not. I get their number and get their communication, and try to, I'll try to help them as they, you know, if they didn't make it, once they get notifications they didn't make it, I'll reach out to them and say, hey, you know, you didn't make it because of this. Come see me, and I'll show you how you can, you know, get into the program. And that's one of the greatest satisfactions I have is we have a graduation ceremony every year where hundreds of students graduate, and they'll come up to me and just say, hey, you know, thanks you know, I'm their business manager. Thank you for helping me 5 years ago, you know, and I don't remember. But just seeing the smile on their face and know that they have a career where they could earn a good living just is really rewarding. So I really do. So what I'm trying to say, I really advocate for our students as they come and get interviewed. And there's some real sharp ones that get in right away because they are ready and they've proven themselves. And then, let's see. And then Friday I was talking to Dr. Janney is telling her I'm going to go visit Dr. Reyes, who's the new principal at San Ysidro High School, and he's actually shown some interest in trying to get some sort of construction pathway there. So I'm sure we'll be hearing more about that. Tomorrow I'll be going to the Fall Sports Award Assembly at SUHSD. My daughter, who has been playing, who's an athlete, and who's a freshman at Castle Park, will be getting an award for, she played in field hockey. She played for 2 months, or, you know, she played soccer her whole life, but she's either going to be put on the first or second team all league for that sport. So, and she's really, and to watch her grow, and over the last, I haven't made all the games, but I made a number of them. In this last game, she scored 2 goals. Actually, I'm going to brag, she scored all 3 goals in field hockey history from Castle Park. This is like her finishing their 3rd year. So she scored as a freshman. She scored the 2 in the last game, and they won their first game ever against Tula. Sorry, Tula fans, but they won their first game ever, and she was just so excited, and that was just so awesome to see. So I'm very proud of her, and she gets good grades too. And then I'm actually trying to work with Dr. Janney. I sent her an email about trying to get the counselors, all our counselors, to set up a meeting, a visit to our training center as well, and hopefully some other training centers, so that counselors can take a tour of the training center and see what's involved there. I think that's a really good idea. And then what else did I have here? And I was telling you when I missed this last meeting, but prior to that, I went to the teacher tenure reception. You know, when I was thinking what I was going to see there, when all the teachers that received tenure were like, all of them were going to be like 25, 26-year-old, you know. That's what I had in my mind, was who was going to be there. And it just really educated me on the different, all the, you know, people, there's just a whole different influx of teachers that become teachers, either second career or they start later or whatever. I was just really impressed by the variety of people who who received that, and that is so awesome. And that concludes my report, I think.
Thank you,
Yes.
Mr. Segura. Thank you. Mr. Pike?
Thank you. First off, I'd like to thank the principal from Otai Ranch, Anna Pedroza, for the celebration of life that they did for the old principal, Jose Bros. We were there in attendance, and it was very well done, and her staff did a great job. And I also wanted to thank Principal Hector Espinosa for sharing some of his stories about Mr. Burrows. It was very nice, very well done. And I also want to say that I'm in support of they're wanting to name the football field after Jose Burrows, and I'm in support of that. So I'd like to recommend that we start the process of doing that. The second thing is that I'm also going to the Sports Award Assembly at Sweetwater under the direction of Mr. Hines. It's always a good program, and I'm glad to see that they're bringing all of the players together that are being honored. Hopefully more of them will show up. In the past, we hadn't had quite the attendance that we should. And the last thing is that Hilltop football team is in the playoffs, and they have no field, and so I'm not sure where they're practicing every day. And as of tonight, they don't even know which field they're going to have their home game on, which is Friday. So hopefully we can get motivated and find out which field they're going to play on, so we can at least put that out to the public, because I think they'd probably want to know where the kids are going to play. So hopefully we can get that done, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pike. Mrs. Hall?
Thank you. I've been out and about too. I've had a few opportunities to see some sports and watch some of the playoff games. I saw Hilltop High and Mar Vista High boys water polo playoff game. It was neck and neck the whole game. It was very exciting. It was a great competition. Apparently the game prior to that they played against each other was similar, and Hilltop had won it, but this time Mar Vista was victorious and came in at the end of the game. They took the lead and kept it. That was exciting. I went to the IB Chamber of Commerce breakfast, where the IB representative on the Port of San Diego, Dan Malcolm, spoke about all the how much the port is expanding, and the shipyard will be expanding in the future. And so I think what we have is a real opportunity, as Mr. Segura said, to train our students up for jobs that will be in demand in the future, especially at SUHSD with their welding program and other programs that we have. That was quite an interesting morning. He knew a lot of facts, and a lot of the number of ships that will be coming here is in the future, both Navy and commercial. I also I enjoyed being part of the Mission and Vision workshop that day. It was great work and a great experience. I represented us. I went to the Jaguar Foundation Luncheon last week and heard some roast. Not only is it a fundraiser for the school, for the scholarships of students and things like that, but a lot of great history was shared in the roast for Supervisor Cox, who was roasted at that event. And then I got to attend the Pumpkin Smash. I was going to go to several events on Saturday, but I couldn't break away from that event. It was so fun, and it was so engaging, and watching these kids and listening to the teachers and the mentors as they were engaging with the students, and they were talking about their experience and how they enjoyed it. And I'll tell you what, I've never seen, it was sort of the group that sponsors that, aside from the Michael, what's his last name? Monaco. And what a guy. That guy is all over the place, and he was there all day with Jesus Uloa. those two men were everywhere all day long, from one catapult to the next. They never stopped. But they were really enthusiastic. This other group that helped sponsor it, he was dressed up in medieval clothes, and he announced all the different events. But Palomar High School, they have the premier support, you know, their mentor and the teacher that, I think he's an AP, right? No? He's the math teacher there, and the math teachers, both of them, are there, and one had a community member that helped support them. They really designed, like, the premier catapults. And after the competition, they had a competition against Mike Monaco, and he was using actually their prior year catapult that they made the first year. He had purchased from them to use for that event, right? So they were both going to try to put this pumpkin the farthest, and this guy that was sponsoring it, or helped to sponsor it and did all the announcing, he stood there and he kept raving about how far Palomar High's launched their pumpkin, because he said he'd never seen anything go that far. So that was pretty fun. Aside from the fact that they brought a full-fledged knight's armor, and they had a young guy dressed up in this knight's armor for the morning, and then they switched, a second guy took over for the rest of the day. And you watched him putting on all this armor. It was pretty magnificent. I mean, it was really a real, for sure, armor. Unbelievable. So I'd say to all the teams next year that we have to start saving all those costumes you find on sale or in the garage sales from Halloween that have any kind of Renaissance theme or, you know, medieval theme. Grab those things and donate them so that these schools can dress up next year. And then I also went to Mar Vista High's PTSA meeting on last Wednesday, and they held their reception for their Reflections reception, which is when they do a big one out at East Lake High every year. The PTSA sponsors that, Reflections, and what it is, all the art students, they have projects that they can submit into this competition that goes statewide. But you go from one level to the district level and then to the county level and so on. But there were two students that participated in that, and one read a poem that she'd written, really, you know, and the other one had a media art that were really special. So they had two students, and that was really the first, I think the second one they did, but I'm looking forward to the PTSA supporting that and building that program until we have something that can really compete against East Lake Highs. Because they had a pretty big one last year when I went to that one. And then next, I'll also be going to the Fall Sports Assembly tomorrow night and some other activities. Last week I also took a day off of work so I could attend a workshop, or it was a class, an all-day class put on by the UCSD Extension and the San Diego Taxpayers Association for developing and managing a bond program. So you learned a lot about the bond financing and different parts of the bond and construction and oversight and transparency and what they would do when they're looking at those things with school districts, and it was quite informative. And I finished my homework about 1:30 in the morning on the day before it was due, so I did make the deadline. That was interesting, and I think it'll be, hopefully I'll be able to retain some of it and make use of it in the next year. So that's what I have to say about that. And then yesterday I participated again on the Save a Life Walk, which now is called Reasons for Living with Hope, or Moving On with Hope. They changed the name of it to put focus on reasons to continue living instead of ending your living, because these walks are for survivors of suicide loss. And it's a great event that people come to encourage each other, but also there's a lot of support. A lot of information is provided, so community across the county comes and participates in this walk. You don't have to be a survivor of suicide loss, but it does bring a reminder that this is a month where people are really impacted by those issues that may cause them to make choices that could be very impactful on those around them, and we want to always reach out and hope and encouragement to people. And if you know of anybody struggling, there are resources, and the first thing you do is listen and make sure you don't take it for granted, but always reach out and support. And for that person that is struggling, that you know of, that you make the phone call, because they probably won't. So I just wanted to remind everybody of that. And thank you. I'll see you next time.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Dr. Jenny?
Could I ask Dr. Carberry to make an announcement?
Sure. Dr.
Thank you.
Carberry?
Thank you. So part of our goal as union leadership is to participate, Dr. Janney talked about it once before, in an effort to support our students and community. So we have what's going on starting November 14th, which I believe is tomorrow, is the holiday drive. And so the goal of this project, which is joint between MAS, which is the Administrative Association, SEA, and all of our classified groups and the district, is to collect items for, it's called Stand Up for Kids, which is a nonprofit dedicated to helping San Diego's homeless teens. And we have multiple drop-offs. They're collecting through December 14th. But what they need are high priority things like new or gently used and clean sleeping bags, tents, tarps, blankets, winter coats, hoodies, sweaters, jeans, gloves, hats, scarves, and then only new socks and hygiene products and single serving food items that kids can have. And so this is a joint effort by all of our groups, and the district office here at Grants Communication is one of the drop-off spots. Bonita Vista Middle School, the front office, Mar Vista High School, the front office, San Ysidro High School, the front office, the compliance office on L Street, and then also the SCTU office at Tierra del Rey, Suite 100. And we're doing this for not just our kids, but all kids, and our groups are committed to helping deliver these and get them out. So it's a great time to help and support a lot of our families and kids.
Wonderful, thank you. And will that be on the website, or is it on the website already?
I don't believe it will be on the website soon, and this will be out, and Dr. Jenny will send it out with her update that goes out to everybody tomorrow.
Excellent, thank you. Anything else, Dr. Jenny? All right, I wanted to say happy belated Veterans Day to all the veterans, and especially those that work for us here at Sweetwater. And shout out to my brother-in-law, Ricky Garcia, for his deployment in Afghanistan and everything that he did there. Also, I wanted to congratulate Ms. Maribel Gavin for her piece and a video that the College Board created to demonstrate the positive impact that principals have as educational leaders, and Ms. Gavin was in that video. It's pretty short, good video, so feel free to watch it on YouTube. It's there. And also, I volunteered at this weekend at Las Palmas Park to construct a little playground for the kiddos. So it's from 8 to 2:30. Well, 1:30. We finished an hour early. We're very efficient, but it was a great event, and it'll be available for the kids on Tuesday because it's still drying concrete and all that. So we help pour all that stuff. So at Las Palmas Park, that's up there. So that was great. And also I want to thank all the viewers out there on YouTube, all the millions of viewers that we're going to. And thank you for all the comments. We haven't looked at the comments, but are we going to be able to get those comments, or do we just go on there and question for many? How we would see the comments and.
Posterity's sake, you can hear me. We're actually disabled comments during the event because we don't want people to be feeding into that. But any questions that we've had so far, I think our peak was like 15 viewers tonight, so that's not bad. But we have had consistently viewers throughout the whole night, so it's been good.
And we are competing against Monday Night Football.
That's
so
right.
It's tough. But
That's right.
We'll get there.
Some
get the
people can watch
viewership.
both.
Wonderful. So thank you for that, Manny. And we'll adjourn to Monday's December 11th, 2015 board meeting. Meeting adjourned. It's
Good night. What's that? You were?